Melvin James Kaminsky came into the world on June 28, 1926, in a cold-water flat on South 3rd Street in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the youngest of 4 boys born to Max and Kate Kaminsky, Jewish immigrants from Kiev and Danzig, who spoke Yiddish at home and poverty in every other language. Max died of tuberculosis when Mel was 2. Kate supported the family by cleaning offices at night and taking in sewing by day. The apartment had 1 bathroom for 12 people, and the only heat came from a coal stove Mel learned to stoke before he could reach the handle without a crate. By age 9, he was banging on pots and pans with spoons, doing impressions of Al Jolson and Eddie Cantor for the neighbors, anything to make his exhausted mother laugh. At Abraham Lincoln High, he was 5'4", 98 pounds, and already the loudest human in any room. He graduated in January 1944, turned 17 in June, and enlisted the day he hit 18 because Hitler had personally killed half my family in Europe and I wanted to return the favor. The Army sent him first to the Army Specialized Training Program at VMI, supposedly to become an officer. Mel lasted 11 weeks before they discovered he spent more time drumming on his helmet than studying ballistics. They bounced him to Fort Sill, then to the 1104th Engineer Combat Group at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, where he learned to defuse mines, build pontoon bridges, and swear in 4 languages. On Christmas Eve 1944, Corporal Kaminsky landed at Le Havre with the 296th Combat Engineer Battalion. His new home was a frozen field in France, his tools a mine detector, a bayonet, and a mouth that never shut. The winter of 1944-45 was the coldest in 50 years. Mel's unit cleared roads for Patton's Third Army, crawling on their bellies in snow, probing for Teller mines and S-mines. The Germans called them bouncing Bettys because they jumped waist-high before exploding. Mel defused over 300 live mines with his bare hands, singing Yiddish folk songs while he worked so the other guys wouldn't hear his teeth chatter. One afternoon near Bastogne, he pulled a shoe mine out of the mud, discovered it was booby-trapped with a second charge underneath, and still managed to disarm both while a German machine gun stitched the snow 10 yards away. During the Bulge, his company was attached to the 78th Infantry Division. On the night of January 13, 1945, outside the village of Rockerath, Mel and Private First Class Seymour aka Cy Lichtman volunteered to blow a hole in a German roadblock so the 311th Infantry could advance. They crawled 400 yards under fire carrying 20 pounds of TNT each, set the charges, lit the fuses, and ran like hell. The explosion opened the road and saved an entire battalion from being cut off. Both men earned the Bronze Star. Mel joked that the medal was just a participation trophy for not getting blown up. His masterpiece came in March 1945 near Remagen. The Germans had retreated across the Rhine, but left loudspeakers on the East Bank blasting propaganda. "American soldiers, go home. Your wives are sleeping with 4 Fs. Mel's commanding officer, Captain John O'Connell, asked if anyone had an answer. Mel requisitioned a 6x6 truck, a public address system, and a stack of Jewish comedy records. For 4 straight nights, he broadcast a one-man show directly at the German lines. Yiddish insults, fart noises, imitations of Hitler with a head cold, and a running commentary on Goebbels' sex life. American GIs in the trenches laughed until they cried. German artillery fired blindly at the sound for hours and never hit the truck once. Mel kept moving it between sets. The psychological warfare officer wrote it up as the most effective counter-propaganda operation of the campaign. He crossed the Rhine on a pontoon bridge his own unit built under fire, marched into Germany, and helped liberate the concentration camp at Nordhausen, a subcamp of Dora Mittelbau. He was 20 years old and saw things no human should ever see. He didn't talk about it for 50 years. He was discharged in June 1946 with 5 battle stars, the Bronze Star, the Combat Engineer Badge, the Good Conduct Medal, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, and a permanent case of frostbite in 3 toes. He came home weighing 112 pounds and carrying a footlocker full of jokes. He changed his name to Mel Brooks, wrote for Sid Caesar, married Anne Bancroft, and turned the same weapon he used against the Wehrmacht, unapologetic, merciless laughter, into The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, History of the World Part 1, and a dozen Broadway hits. Every time he put a Nazi on stage and made the audience roar, he was finishing the job he started on the Rhine in 1945. At 99 years old, as of 2025, he is the last man alive who personally told the entire German army to shove it up their Führer live and over the loudspeaker while they were still shooting at him. Mel Brooks didn't just fight Nazis. He made them the joke of the century, and he's still laughing louder than all of them.
Norman Noah Feld entered the world on March 24, 1924, in a row house on South Street in Philadelphia. The only child of David and Bertha Feld, Jewish immigrants who ran a kosher butcher shop 7 days a week. The apartment above the store smelled of blood, bleach, and chicken fat. Norman grew up big, slow-talking, and already sporting the heavy-lidded eyes, thick eyebrows, and permanent scowl that would one day make him television's most beloved grouch. At Central High School, he stood 6 feet, weighed 210 pounds, played tackle on the football team, boxed middleweight for the Jewish Community Center, and spent more time in detention than in class because he answered teachers the same way he answered opponents in the ring, with a glare and a one-liner. Pearl Harbor came on a Sunday. Norman was 17, listening to the radio in the shop when the news broke. He told his father that night, "I'm going to kill every Jap and German I can find." His father, who had fled pogroms in Russia, simply nodded and handed him a cleaver to finish closing up. The day Norman turned 18, March 24, 1942, he walked into the Army Air Force's recruiting station on Market Street and demanded to be a gunner. The sergeant asked why. Norman said, "Because I want to shoot back, and I'm too ugly to be a pilot." They sent him to basic at Shepherd Field, Texas, then to flexible gunnery school at Las Vegas Army Airfield, later Nellis. He graduated top of his class with the twin 50 caliber tail turret of the North American B-25 Mitchell medium bomber. In January 1944, he shipped out with the 340th Bombardment Group, 488th Bombardment Squadron, the famous Bridge Busters, first to Pompeii Airfield in Italy, then to Corsica, then to Dijon, France. His station was the Sperry tail turret, a plexiglass bubble at the very rear of the airplane, where he sat alone, knees to chest, breathing oxygen through a rubber mask, temperature minus 40 degrees at 12,000 feet, no heat, no company except the roar of the engines and the chatter on the intercom. His first combat mission was May 18, 1944, Genoa Harbor. 36 more followed. They bombed bridges over the Po River until the Germans couldn't move a tank north of Rome. They hit rail yards at Bologna, gun positions along the Gothic Line, oil refineries at Ploiesti, Romania, the most heavily defended target in Europe, and troop concentrations in the Rhone Valley. He flew so low on some missions he could see Italian civilians waving white sheets from rooftops. On August 15, 1944, over the Rhone Valley during the invasion of southern France, his B-25, Miss Fancy, was jumped by 6 Messerschmitt Bf-109s. The German fighters came in from 6 o'clock low. Norman opened up with both guns at 400 yards and kept firing as the lead 109 closed to 50 yards. He saw his tracers walk up the fuselage, hit the cockpit, and the plane rolled over and exploded. The pilot confirmed the kill. The waist gunners got another. The B-25 limped home with 180 holes, the bombardier dead in the nose, and Norman still in the turret, hands frozen to the triggers. He earned the Distinguished Flying Cross for that mission. The citation reads, for extraordinary achievement in aerial combat while defending his aircraft against overwhelming odds. The Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 6 battle stars, the Presidential Unit Citation with oak leaf cluster, and a permanent ringing in his ears from the 50 calibers that never went away. He finished his tour in December 1944 with malaria, frostbitten toes, and 36 missions, 12 more than required. He came home weighing 160 pounds, refused a commission, and took a discharge in California because "I never want to see another airplane seat that isn't first class." He used the GI Bill to study drama at Temple University and the American Theater Wing in New York. Changed his last name to Fell because Feld sounded too Jewish for 1950s casting directors, and started playing tough cops, sergeants, and bartenders. He was in Porkchop Hill with Gregory Peck, Ocean's 11 with the Rat Pack, PT 109, The Graduate as the landlord Mr. McCleary, who tells Dustin Hoffman plastics, and hundreds of television episodes of The Untouchables, Gunsmoke, and 77 Sunset Strip. Then, in 1977, John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt needed a landlord. Norman walked on set, read one line, "This place is a dump," and Stanley Roper was born. For 5 seasons on Three's Company and 3 more on The Ropers, America laughed at the cheap, lecherous, perpetually annoyed landlord who growled, "Helen," and slammed doors. Viewers never knew that same gravel voice had once screamed "Bandits 6 o'clock high" over the intercom while tracer rounds stitched the sky behind him, or that the squinting glare he gave Jack Tripper was the same one he used to line up a Messerschmitt in his gun sight. He married twice, had 2 daughters, and kept his Distinguished Flying Cross in a cigar box under the bed next to a photo of Miss Fancy riddled with holes. He died of multiple myeloma on December 14, 1998, at age 74. The Air Force sent an honor guard to his funeral at Mount Sinai Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Norman Fell spent the war alone in a freezing glass bubble shooting at the Luftwaffe, and then spent the rest of his life making America laugh with the same voice that once saved his crew over Italy. Every time he glared at the camera and said "one of these days," he was still the tail gunner from Philadelphia who had already looked death in the face 36 times and won. John H. Lebselter Jr. was born on September 18, 1920, in a working-class neighborhood of Newark, New Jersey. The only child of John Lebselter Sr., a Jewish civil engineer who changed the family name to Warden during the Depression so he could get contracts, and Laura Costello, an Irish Catholic housewife who kept the house spotless and the rosary close. Jack grew up tough, street smart, and already sporting the flattened nose and cauliflower ears that would later make casting directors reach for the phone the moment he walked in the room. At East Side High, he boxed Golden Gloves welterweight, going 62-3 with 41 knockouts, worked nights as a lifeguard at the Jersey Shore, and bounced drunks out of bars in Hell's Kitchen for extra cash. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, he was 21, working as a deckhand in the Merchant Marine aboard the SS Santa Clara, running convoys to Murmansk through U-boat wolf packs. He hated the sea. In 1942, he quit the Merchant Marine, enlisted in the Army, and volunteered for the paratroops because, in his words, they paid an extra $50 a month and you got to jump out of airplanes instead of being cooped up on a damn boat. He earned his wings with the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Benning, Georgia in the summer of 1942. The training was brutal. 5 jumps to qualify, running Currahee Mountain 3 times up, 3 times down, living in tents while instructors screamed that only the strong would survive. Jack loved every minute. By 1943, he was a private first class in Company F, 2nd Battalion 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, bound for England and the Big Show. On the night of June 5, 1944, Jack stood in the door of a C-47 over the English Channel, the sky full of planes, the air full of fear. His stick's objective was drop zone C near Sainte-Mère-Église, seize the causeways behind Utah Beach so the 4th Infantry Division could move inland without being trapped in the flooded marshes. At 01:07 hours, the green light flashed. Jack hooked his static line, shuffled forward, and jumped into total blackness. Anti-aircraft fire lit the sky like the 4th of July. His parachute opened late. He hit the ground at 30 miles an hour in a flooded field, both legs buckling on impact. The right femur snapped in 3 places, the tibia shattered, and he landed face down in 6 inches of brackish water, with German machine guns already sweeping the area. He bit down on his gloves so he wouldn't scream, cut himself free from the harness with his jump knife, and began crawling. Every movement was agony. He dragged himself 2 miles on elbows and 1 good knee, following the sound of crickets, the 101st Clickers, until he reached the regimental assembly point near Hayesville at dawn. Medics found him half-conscious, covered in mud, legs swollen to twice its size. They shot him full of morphine and loaded him onto a jeep for the field hospital. Jack refused evacuation. He told the surgeon, "Fix it enough so I can walk, Doc. I still got work to do." They set the leg as best they could in a plaster cast from hip to toe, gave him crutches, and shipped him back to England anyway. 3 months later, still limping badly, Jack talked his way back to the 501st just in time for Operation Market Garden. On September 17, 1944, he jumped into Holland near Sonne with the cast freshly removed and steel pins still in the bone. He fought for 72 days straight across the island, earning a Bronze Star for knocking out a German machine gun nest near Wegel while hopping on 1 foot and throwing grenades like baseballs. He was recommended for the Silver Star. The paperwork got lost because, officially, he was supposed to be in a hospital bed in England. December 1944 brought the coldest winter in 50 years and Hitler's last gamble, the Ardennes Offensive. The 101st was trucked to Bastogne and surrounded. Jack's company held the line northeast of the town near the village of Foy. On January 3, 1945, their wooden barracks took a direct hit from a German 88mm shell. The building collapsed in flames. Jack was buried under burning beams, the same right leg broken again in 2 new places. He clawed his way out through the fire, dragged 2 wounded paratroopers clear, and kept fighting with a captured German MP-40 until medics physically wrestled him onto a stretcher. This time there was no talking his way out. He spent the rest of the war in hospitals in England and the States, discharged in October 1945 with 2 Purple Hearts, the Bronze Star with V device and 4 battle stars, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with Arrowhead device and 4 battle stars, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Parachute Badge with 2 Combat Jump Stars, the Presidential Unit Citation, and a limp he carried for the next 61 years. He came home to New York, used the GI Bill to study acting with Erwin Piscator at the New School, and started getting cast as cops, sergeants, and jurors because, as Sidney Lumet later said, Jack didn't act tough, he was tough. He was juror number 7 in 12 Angry Men, the supply sergeant in From Here to Eternity, the detective in Shampoo, the coach in Brian's Song, the jury foreman in The Verdict, and appeared in over 100 films and countless television shows. He was nominated for 2 Oscars, won an Emmy, and never once complained about the leg that ached every cold morning. He married twice, had 1 son, Christopher, and kept his jump boots polished on a shelf next to his Oscar nominations. He died peacefully of heart and kidney failure on July 19, 2006, at age 85 in New York City. The 101st Airborne Division sent a color guard to his funeral at St. Antonio of Padua in Nanuet. Jack Warden jumped into Normandy with a shattered leg, fought the Battle of the Bulge with 2 shattered legs, and spent 6 decades proving that every tough guy role he ever played was just Tuesday for him. The gruff voice that told Paul Newman, "You can't handle the truth," in the verdict, was the same voice that once whispered "click, click" in a flooded Norman field while crawling on broken bones to rejoin the fight.
Charles Edward Durning was born on February 28, 1923, in Highland Falls, New York, the ninth of 10 children in an Irish Catholic family that survived the Depression on army rations and prayers. His father, James, was a West Point instructor who lost a leg in World War I and died when Charles was 12. His mother, Louise, washed laundry at the military academy to feed the kids. Charles grew up big, barrel-chested, and already sporting the round face and sad eyes that would later make him America's favorite fat, lovable, tough guy. He quit high school at 16, worked as an usher at a burlesque house, and learned to dance by watching the strippers and to fight by bouncing drunks who tried to grab them. Pearl Harbor came when he was 18. He tried to enlist immediately but was rejected for a hard murmur. He kept trying until January 1943, when the Army finally took him and sent him to the 1st Infantry Division. He volunteered for the Rangers because they were the craziest sons of bitches in the Army. By late 1943, he was a private in Company C, 1st Battalion, 5th Ranger Infantry Battalion, later part of the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions at Normandy. He trained at the Assault Training Center in Scotland and at the Commando Depot at Auchnacarry, where they taught him to kill with a knife, a garrote, or his bare hands. On June 6, 1944, Charles was in the first wave at Omaha Beach, Dog Green sector, the bloodiest 200 yards of sand in American history. He was an LCA 860, one of the 10 boats carrying Company C, 2nd Ranger Battalion, tasked with scaling the 100-foot cliffs at Pointe du Hoc and silencing the 6 155mm guns that could sink the entire invasion fleet. At H hour, the ramp dropped. German MG-42s opened up from the cliffs. The first 30 men off the boat were killed instantly. Charles was number 31. He hit the water, went under, came up, and started running. Bullets stitched the water around him. He made it to the shingle, dove behind a burned-out landing craft, and looked back. Of the 70 men in his company who landed, only 20 were still alive by the time they reached the base of the cliff. He climbed the cliff under fire, using a toggle rope, a bayonet, and sheer rage. When he reached the top, he found the guns had been moved inland. He fought through hedgerows for 3 days, earning a Silver Star for knocking out 2 machine gun nests with grenades and a Thompson. On June 9th, he was wounded by a mine near Vierville, shrapnel in the thigh and hip. Medics patched him up and sent him back. In August, he was hit again near Brest, bullet through the chest. In December 1944, he was captured during the Bulge, escaped, was recaptured, and finally liberated in 1945 after surviving the Normandy area. He was one of the few Rangers who made it out alive. He finished the war with a Silver Star, Bronze Star with V, 3 Purple Hearts, the Good Conduct Medal, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with Arrowhead and 5 Battle Stars, the Combat Infantryman Badge, the Ranger Tad, and the French Légion d'Honneur, awarded in 2008. He never talked about it until the 1990s, when he finally admitted he was one of the very first men off the first boat on the worst beach on the worst day. He came home in 1946, used the GI Bill to study acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and started playing cops, coaches, and corrupt politicians. He was the dancing governor in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, the toad-kissing father in Tootsie, the Santa Claus in Home for the Holidays, and appeared in over 200 films and television shows. He was nominated for 2 Oscars, won a Tony, and danced on screen like a man who had already danced through hell. He married twice, had 3 children, and kept his Silver Star in a drawer next to his tap shoes. He died on Christmas Eve, December 24, 2012, at age 89. The Rangers sent a color guard to his funeral at St. Malachy's in New York. Charles Durning was one of the first men off the first boat at Omaha Dog Green, survived the worst 15 minutes of D-Day, and spent 60 years proving that the toughest Rangers can also be the softest, funniest, most lovable men on earth. Every time he shuffled across a stage and grinned, he was still that 21-year-old kid from Highland Falls who ran through machine gun fire so the rest of us could live free. Mladen George Sekulovic was born on March 22, 1912 in Chicago, the first child of Peter Sekulovic, a Serbian immigrant milkman from Montenegro, and Minnie Sabera,
a Czech seamstress who spoke 5 languages and never learned to drive. They lived in a 2-room cold-water flat in Gary, Indiana, above the Serbian Orthodox Church. Mladen grew up speaking Serbian before English, helping his father deliver milk at 4 a.m., and already sporting the broken nose and thick eyebrows that would later make him instantly recognizable. At Emerson High, he worked in the steel mills to help pay tuition, swinging a sledgehammer for 3 years, until the day he quit and told his father, "I'm going to be an actor or die trying." Pearl Harbor came when he was 29, already married to Mona Graham and doing summer stock. He tried to enlist immediately, but was classified 4F because of a deviated septum and varicose veins. He kept trying. In 1943, the Army Air Forces lowered standards and took him as a staff sergeant, sent him to gunnery school, then to the 346th Bomb Group, 504th Bombardment Squadron at Biggs Field, Texas. His job was crew chief and waist gunner on the consolidated B-24 Liberator, the 4-engine flying boxcar that flew higher, farther, and crashed more than any bomber in the war. In March 1944, his squadron shipped to RAF Deepham Green, England, 8th Air Force. Karl flew his first mission on April 22, 1944. Hamm, Germany, rail marshalling yards. 34 more followed. They hit Berlin 7 times, the Ruhr Valley oil plants, the synthetic oil refineries at Mersburg, the most heavily defended target in Europe. He stood in the open waist window, no parachute, too bulky, oxygen mask frozen to his face, twin 5.0 calibers iced up, temperature minus 50 degrees at 26,000 feet. Flak tore holes the size of basketballs in the fuselage. He watched friends' planes disappear in fireballs. On June 21, 1944, over Berlin, his B-24 Tinevus took a direct flak burst in the bomb bay. The bombardier was killed instantly. Karl dragged the body back, patched the oxygen lines, and helped the pilot keep the plane in formation so the bombs could still drop. They limped home on 3 engines. On August 16, 1944, over Magdeburg, another flak burst shredded the left wing. The plane went into a spin. The pilot ordered bailout. Karl was last out. He pulled the ripcord at 800 feet, the absolute minimum. His chute barely opened before he hit the ground in a German potato field. He was captured within minutes and spent 3 weeks as a POW in Frankfurt before being released in a prisoner exchange, because he was enlisted, not officer. He flew 2 more missions after that, finished his tour with 35 combat hours, and came home with the Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 7 battle stars, the Presidential Unit Citation, and a nose that had been broken so many times it finally stayed crooked forever. He changed his name to Karl Malden because Sekulovich wouldn't fit on a marquee, joined the group theater, and started playing cops, priests, and honest working stiffs. He was Mitch opposite Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, on stage and screen, won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, then became Detective Mike Stone on The Streets of San Francisco for 5 seasons. He made over 100 films, always the guy who told the truth even when it hurt, because he had already stared death in the face 35 times at 26,000 feet and never blinked. He married Mona for 70 years, the longest marriage in Hollywood history, had 2 daughters, and kept his Air Medal in the same drawer as his Oscar. He died of natural causes on July 1, 2009, at age 97. The Air Force sent an honor guard to his funeral at Westwood Village Memorial Park. Karl Malden flew through hell in a B-24, came home with a face only a mother could love, and spent 60 years proving that the most honest nose in Hollywood had already been broken by German flak long before the cameras ever rolled.
Gwilyn Samuel Newton Ford was born on May 1, 1916, in Quebec City, Canada. the only child of a railroad executive who was also a captain in the Canadian militia. When he was 7, the family moved to Santa Monica, California, where his father became a motel owner, and young Glenn grew up surfing, riding horses, and already speaking with the quiet, clipped voice that would later make him the perfect Western hero. He was a natural athlete, a crack shot with a .22 rifle, and by age 16 was acting in local theater. In 1939, he signed with Columbia Pictures and quickly became a leading man in B-movies: Texas, The Desperados, Destroyer. When Pearl Harbor happened, he was 25, married to Eleanor Powell, and one of the biggest stars at Columbia. He enlisted in the U.S. Naval Reserve in December 1942, commissioned as a lieutenant, junior grade, because of his pre-war experience with the Coast Guard Auxiliary. They sent him to the Naval Photographic Science Laboratory in Anacostia, then to Marine Corps combat photographer training at Quantico. His orders were simple: go where the fighting is, film everything, and come back alive if possible. In 1943, he shipped out to the Pacific with the 4th Marine Division as a combat cameraman and intelligence officer. He filmed the invasions of Tarawa, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam with a 16mm IMO and a 35mm Bell and Howell, standing on the beach while bullets snapped past, narrating into a wire recorder so the footage would have sound. On Saipan, he was wounded by shrapnel in the arm, but kept filming until the corpsman dragged him away. In April 1945, he was attached to the OSS and landed with the first wave at Okinawa, shooting color footage of the fighting that would later be used in newsreels and classified briefings. His darkest assignment came in May 1945. He was detached to the 7th Army in Europe and ordered to film the liberation of Dachau concentration camp outside Munich. On April 29, 1945, he walked through the gates behind the 42nd and 45th Infantry Divisions with a motion picture camera in his hands and a sidearm on his hip. He filmed the open boxcars full of corpses, the emaciated survivors, the gas chambers, the crematoria ovens still warm. He shot over 30,000 feet of film that day, much of it in color, and narrated in a voice that never rose above a whisper. The footage was so horrific that parts of it were classified for decades. Glenn never watched it again. He told his son Peter decades later, "I still smell the place when I close my eyes." He finished the war as a lieutenant commander with the Navy Commendation Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 8 battle stars, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with Arrowhead, the Philippine Liberation Ribbon, the American Campaign Medal, and a permanent tremor in his left hand that he hid on camera by keeping it in his pocket. He returned to Hollywood in 1946, resumed his career at Columbia, and became one of the biggest box office draws of the 1950s. Gilda with Rita Hayworth, The Big Heat, Blackboard Jungle, and especially the Westerns, 3:10 to Yuma, The Sheepman, Cowboy. He was the quiet, decent man who could kill you without raising his voice. Critics called it underplaying. Veterans knew it was the real thing. He re-enlisted during the Korean War, served 3 years in Vietnam as a commander in the Naval Reserve, retired in 1975 as a captain with 33 years of service, and kept every foot of his combat film locked in a vault. He married 4 times, had 1 son, Peter, and never missed a chance to visit veterans' hospitals. He died of natural causes on August 30, 2006, at age 90 in Beverly Hills. The Navy sent a full honor guard to his funeral at Woodlawn Cemetery in Santa Monica. Glenn Ford spent the war filming hell with a camera in one hand and a .45 in the other, then spent 60 years proving that the quietest heroes can carry the heaviest memories. Every time he stood on a dusty street and faced down a killer in a Western, he was still that young lieutenant walking through Dachau, filming the unfilmable so the world would never forget.
Henry Silva was born on September 23, 1926, some records say 1928, in Spanish Harlem, New York City, the only child of Jesus Silva, a Puerto Rican merchant seaman who vanished when Henry was 4, and Angelina Martinez, a Sicilian seamstress who raised him alone in a tenement on East 116th Street. The neighborhood was knives, gangs, and hunger. Henry grew up short, wiry, with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that never blinked. He spoke Spanish at home, Italian on the stoop, and learned English by fighting for it. At 13, he was already running numbers for the mob. At 15, he was expelled from school for stabbing a bully with a penknife. The judge gave him a choice: reform school or the army when he turned 17. Henry waited. On his 17th birthday in 1944, he tried to enlist. The recruiters laughed at the skinny kid who looked 12. He kept coming back until 1950, when the Korean War exploded and the army suddenly needed bodies. He walked into the recruiting station on Fordham Road, signed the papers, and asked for the infantry because "I want to see if they bleed like everybody else." They sent him to Fort Dix, then Airborne School at Fort Benning. By 1951, he was a private first class in the 11th Airborne Division, 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team, the famous Rakuzans. He landed in Korea in March 1951 during Operation Tomahawk, parachuting behind enemy lines near Munsan-ni with the mission to cut off retreating North Korean columns. The drop was at night in freezing wind. Henry's chute tangled in a pine tree, he cut himself free and hit the ground running. For the next 14 months, he fought in every major action: the Iron Triangle, Heartbreak Ridge, Porkchop Hill, and the bloody hills around the Punch Bowl. On the night of August 27, 1951, near the village of Pre, Henry's platoon was holding a ridge when 2 Chinese battalions hit them with human wave attacks. The position was overrun. Henry was wounded in the shoulder by a burp gun burst, but kept firing his BAR until it was empty. When the platoon leader and sergeant were both killed, Henry, still a private first class, took command of the 23 survivors. For 6 hours, he led them in a fighting withdrawal down the reverse slope, carrying one wounded man on his back while dragging another by the collar. He set up a final defensive line behind a rice paddy dike and held it until dawn, personally killing at least 12 enemy soldiers with a captured PPSH-41 and grenades. When relief finally arrived at sunrise, only 9 men were still alive. Henry was the only one not wounded a second time. He was awarded the Silver Star for gallantry and action against an armed enemy, plus the Bronze Star with V, 2 Purple Hearts, the Korean Service Medal with 5 Battle Stars, the Combat Infantryman Badge, the Parachute Badge with Combat Star, and the United Nations Medal. He came home in 1953 with a permanent scar across his left cheek and eyes that made people cross the street when he looked at them. He used the GI Bill to study at the Actors Studio in New York. Lee Strasberg took one look at those eyes and said, "Kid, you don't act dangerous, you are dangerous." He made his film debut in 1952 in Viva Zapata, then played killers, psychos, and cold-blooded assassins for the next 50 years. The Korean assassin in the original Manchurian Candidate, 1962, the drug lord in Ocean's 11, the samurai hitman in Ghost Dog, and dozens of Italian thrillers where he was billed as the American with the killer face. Directors loved him because he never blinked on camera. Audiences loved to hate him because he looked like he could kill you with a glance, and he actually could. He made over 130 films, always the same icy, silent predator who spoke softly and carried a very big gun. He married 3 times, had 2 sons, and kept his Silver Star citation in a plain manila envelope marked "Korea, do not open." He died peacefully on September 14, 2022, at age 95 or 96 at the Motion Picture Home in Woodland Hills. The 11th Airborne Association sent a color guard to his funeral. Henry Silva spent 14 months in hell, killing the enemy up close, then spent 70 years doing it on screen for a living. Every time those unblinking eyes stared into the camera, America was watching a real Silver Star hero who had already looked death in the face on a Korean ridge and made death blink first.